Love fishing? Then you've got to listen to Fishing the DMV. Join me, your host, Thomas Ahrens, for an entertaining and informative podcast dealing with all things fishing in our area. Every week, we have on special guests ranging from the best fishing guides on our local waters to government officials from the Department of Wildlife Resource talking about hot-button issues like the invasive northern snakehead. We also highlight the best fishing opportunities in and around the greater D.C. area, Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Listen to Fishing the DMV on the iHeart app, subscribe to us on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, that's Fishing the DMV.
Murman. After Dark.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Agile Uprising podcast. Man, this is something new. So you know who I am. I'm not going to introduce myself. My guest, my special conversation we have lined up for you this week is the man of the hour, Chris Murman. So let's talk about Murman. Before we go in, let's talk about the genesis of this episode. So you've had a lot of life change in the past, say, 48 months, give or take. And sure. At one point, you started showing up in the Discord server with it was almost like, you know how there's like the Dark Brandon meme for Joe Biden? You were kind of like Dark Murman, right? Like you showed up and you were almost, some of the things you were saying were almost antithetical to what you'd been saying previously. And so for our listeners, I made a joke that, man, this is Dark Murman. We got to get him on a podcast. And you threw down the gauntlet. So here we are. So I guess I'm going to start it off by asking, which is the question which is going to kick this whole thing off is some of the things you've been saying lately are almost not, I won't say 180 degrees, but it seems like for whatever reason, you've gotten a different sense of perspective with what we do regarding coaching, regarding transformation, all that yaha bullshit. You've kind of gotten a different point of view and you've been very vocal about it. So let's start with the change in perspective. So what was the and you know, we've all shared that we had a lot go on over the last 48 months. We've been locked in the house. We have a disaster of an election. We've got all sorts of crazy shit going on. But what was it that started to make you kind of step back and okay, so I don't want to compare you to a famous philosopher. I don't want to, but I'm going to. So one of my favorite philosophers is Ludwig Wittgenstein, and he spent his entire career saying one thing. The 90% of his life, he was harping on one thing. And the last 10%, he came out, he said, you know what? I'm pretty sure I was fucking wrong, and it's the exact opposite of what I was doing. You did the same thing without being a Swiss philosopher. So let's start with that, man. Like, where did the big turn come from?
Hi, Jay. That's the longest introduction I think I've ever had.
And I didn't even introduce myself. What the fuck?
Ever. I mean, the wind up of that. I mean, you just squeezed every drop out of that first pitch, buddy. Wow. I'd like to think I'll be employable after this podcast. So, like,
well, let's set the rules of engagement now. Don't get you or me, neither one of us want to get fired.
No. If we're going to be fired, it's not because of this podcast. Let's just start with that.
Yeah. Cheers to that. To that.
You know, mazel tov.
Yeah. And names should not be changed to impugn the guilty. So
I will only change the names of people that I actually care about.
Fair enough.
You and I have both had really interesting routes through this whole process of big A agile transformation, scrumifying things. And I think that you probably came out of the womb cynical. I did not quite start out in
I'm from New Jersey. Cynical. It's by default. Yeah.
For sure. Right. Like the country said to go hell with yourself, and you had to pick up the pieces. I get it. That's why your part of the country is so nasty, and or at least honestly nasty, whereas my part of the country is fake nasty. So that there we go. Like, God bless Texas. I just kind of started seeing things that I started out as a kind of a Scrum Master, product owner, sort of FTE kind of route. I worked at some startups. I worked at, some product companies. trying to master this idea of like, what does it mean to facilitate? What does it mean to own requirements? The basic blocking and tacklings of everything that we do that doesn't involve writing better code. And I would hear things at a meetup and I'd repeat them. I'd read things on a blog and I'd repeat them. You know, buzzword here, buzz phrase here, glom it together. Here's a new thing. Like that's what we all do. Like I'm not trying to say like I'm especially cursed. Like we're all doing this. We're trying to figure this out. My own, you know, amazing wife who became a Scrum Master in the last year and a half, 2 years, like she's experiencing the same sort of thing, which is like, I hear you say this thing and then I read this over here and then I take this here, you know, pasta la pasta, don't get any on you kind of a thing, right? Like that, there's that attachment of what we do to like, because we don't know until we know. Well, I've done enough stuff that now I know, consulted for a long time, done this at a lot of other companies. Now I'm owning the whole transformation. You and I've talked about this before in our roles about owning transformations. It's different when you are the one that makes the call. You have to enforce the boundaries. You have to ask the tough questions. You have to say no.
Yeah.
Right? Like all of those things give you a perspective that's just different. And I don't know, I guess I just finally realized, like, I don't know that I've had the best of intention with my approaches. And I worry that we're passing along the same bad habits to the next gen and the next gen and the next gen. And so I guess by saying this was dumb and I shouldn't have done it is hopefully if there's one person that's like, hey, maybe before just rinse, wash, repeating, maybe I should think through, like if it's just one, like I know that that's over, like supremely idealistic, especially for a cynical person such as myself. I'm ending this ramble by saying like, I know I'm not going to change anything by admitting this stuff. I just feel like we should do more admitting of our mess ups. You know what I mean? Like Jay, you've wanted to do FailCon for years.
Yeah, I think, I referred to failure earlier this week in a training class as a unplanned learning opportunity. And I think that's probably the most semantically pure yet disingenuous way to describe it. But I want to go back to a word you just used.
Okay.
You used the word intention, right? And a lot of times, never attribute to malice when it's easily attributable to stupidity or ignorance. And I'm going to push back on that a bit because old Murman and new Murman, right? I don't necessarily think old Murman was ill-intentioned. I think old Murman had a way of looking at things, and that was what he knew, and that's how you went. And now, since we've landed, we hinted at it, we've landed in some of the same trenches where we get our teeth kicked in. Thank God for dental coverage, even though in the States it's deplorable. That's an intentional word of the usage of the word deplorable. Since we've gotten our teeth kicked in, it's kind of forced realism down our throats. So do you really think it was intentional, or was just you were using what you knew at the time, and now with the benefit of divorcing that perspective and shifting it, you've just kind of given a different appreciation to it?
I have a Elizabeth Hurley joke just waiting when you mentioned teeth care, but I love that she used the word.
She's the one
Elizabeth Hurley, Austin Powers. She shows him all the dental gear and is like, by the way, your teeth don't have to be so fucked up, bro.
Okay, fair enough. By the way,
I do love that you use the word divorce in that scenario, because that's also a lovely part of my journey, and many of our journeys. So here's the thing, I think I'm 50-50 on your question. I think that while I would like to think I didn't know any better, honestly, you didn't know that the bullshit you were peddling wasn't gonna work. It's nice to say that you knew it or that you didn't know it. I could argue it both ways, because half the time I'm saying stuff, I know it's but here's truth number one of this podcast. You're going to say some stuff you absolutely know will not work. and you were going to absolutely advocate for it because it's the best choice you have available, which is like saying, I don't really know who to vote for because both the candidates are terrible. So I'm going to pick the least terrible choice. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that that's like, okay, in an election, sure, there's two parties, maybe three, whatever. That's my choice.
You're
Or
kind
I
of
could
stuck,
just say not vote. Well, in our work, there's a million choices. Like,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of right. That's, I mean, again, sin number 2 is thinking that there's a right answer to things. I mean, Jay, how many times have you been pulled into a room or a chat room or a whatever, and you basically get called in to break a tie? Hey, one of us thinks this, or half of us think this, and the other half of us think this. Which one do you say is right? As if anything you say is gospel.
Yeah, I mean, now I will say that lens changes for you more than me because you were specifically hired in multiple places as a consultant. So you were supposed to be
You did that crap at your last gig a ton of times.
Yeah, it's true, but I'd handle that totally. I would handle that question in a way that's probably inappropriate and irresponsible. I would just walk in and say, "You're both wrong. Find a different solution because you're both wrong." I mean, that's not going to work. But
I've never been in a conversation where that was an option.
I just tell people you're all wrong. Figure it out.
So the way that I word it is that I don't care what you all decide, but I'm not doing anything until everybody's heads shake in the same direction. So I think that's pretty much the same thing that what we're saying is I'm Switzerland in this. Like, I don't care, but I have to ask the question. So again, I will go back to the previous point of there are still times that they're like, hey, Chris, here's the situation. What can we do? And I take a deep breath, I breathe out, and then I say to myself, whatever answer you give is going to be bullshit. And then I say things. Because there is no good answer. It's going to be a compromise of some sort, right? Leadership is about, I know we're going to be recording like this idea of like, what does it mean to be like in charge of a transformation kind of
Yeah,
thing?
well, the next episode will probably be some. Well, it'll be around. I think the next episode, to give everybody a little bit of a preview, it's really going to be discussion around, hey, now I'm in charge of running a transformation. What, to quote what Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall, what the fuck do I do now? Because we don't.
Yeah,
it's a big change. Yeah.
Who was your daddy? And
what the fuck? I've never been to Mars. But keep going.
I guess I just say that to say that, like, I am placed face to face with previous answers that I have given and previous guidance that I've given, and I just see more now. Like, it's almost like I see the other, like the consultant me looking at me giving answers, and I see me as the leader managing the answers, and I just have a different perspective now, and I'm really frustrated with my. I don't think that I don't think of myself as a bad person, a bad consultant, a bad coach, a bad whatever. Many of our friends, many board members, many of our community, right? You all are still consultants. You still go in. There is just a different tenor to being a consultant versus
a full timer. Oh yeah,
from the inside. So all I'm trying to say is that I have seen things that I've said through a new lens, and I'm frustrated by it. That's the whole point of this conversation. Is that fair?
No, that's really fair. And the question that I keep landing on to you is that necessarily a bad thing, or is that just maturation and growth? Because I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing.
Well, so here's where we all differ as people, right? So the reason why I say something is because I feel like it's irresponsible not to. I think if someone were to say, hey, I get where you're coming from, Murm. I appreciate your, I mean, if you read my blog, you listen to me on these podcasts, I'm a bit of an open book. You know, like I'm not going to A, feel ashamed for that, and B, I'm not going to be upset if you're not as open of a book as I am. I've just learned how to share about myself enough to where I'm like, I can say anything and I don't care. So I think the reason why I say something, Jay, is that I feel like it's irresponsible to just pretend like it's all kosher and be cool and just keep on about your business. Because if that's the case, like that's how we perpetuate like 2-week waterfall. You know what I mean? And I say that not to besmirch any of you that are like, I just said that we were doing a 2-week waterfall the other day. Damn, Merm's calling me out. I'm saying that like your organization puts a bunch of roadblocks in front of you. I had at my organization in January, it was announced, hey, our current build server is going to be going out of service soon enough. We're going to be moving to a CI/CD, sort of deployment pattern. Everybody needs to work on this tool that we're working on, or they need to start building pipelines. It's September and most teams still haven't done it, right?
Yep.
That is what I'm talking about, the Agile community. There are things that we should have been doing for years and we're not. So if you're in your second year, you're in your third year, you're in your fifth year, you're in whatever, you're not an idiot. Like you come in knowing things, you come in seeing things. Like it's not hard to see things. That's why the coach job is so much fun, because you don't have to actually own any of the outcomes and just
yes,
say, hey,
this is true. What are you responsible for? Well, if you think about it, nothing.
Again, not besmirching the role. I'm basically as a VP of transformation, I'm basically an Agile coach for the entire organization.
Same. Yep. Same.
And have about the exact same empowerment as the consultant Agile coach.
This is the conversation we're going to have in another episode where, as a VP of transformation, as a director of transformation, we know in our heart of hearts, due to the complexity of the systems that we work in, that we really can't own anything because it's way too complex. There's too many moving parts. You can't attribute anything good or bad to us. However, the delta is the organizations that hire us typically do want to attribute good or bad to us. And that's a conversation for a different time. But so I want to pull on the thread a bit where when someone hires a consultant, it's always been my experience that you hire the consultant to tell your boss the things that you would say to them, but they listen to the consultant because they're exponentially more expensive. So, for example, in a previous life, we hired a vendor. How do I say this? Their name rhymes with Schmotworks, and they told our bosses the exact same thing that we were telling them. But because they were $750 an hour and not $130,000 a year, they listened to them. So as a full-timer, and I've always been a full-timer, so maybe I have some weird sort of blinders. We're going to unpack that in the next Lay on Your Couch, Tell Me About Your Mother episode. I have a different perspective where it was like, they're telling my boss the same thing that I was going to say, but they're listening to them because they're expensive. So at that point, it was worth the money. So, I mean, you're hired as a consultant to be the adult in the room and to be the adult and to know the answer, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's kind of the assumption. So I guess my question is, are you being a little bit too hard on yourself, Merm?
The answer of, are you ever being too hard on yourself, Merman? The answer is almost always potentially maybe. Like always be my maybe, you know what I mean? Like, I could always be seen as being too hard on myself. And like Lef has the same problem. Troy beats himself. Like many people that I would say that are smarter than me, like those two, like you also have moments where you.
Well, if you're I think it's safe to say, Chris, if you're any good at what you do, if you take any pride in what you do, you're going to be harder on yourself than is probably realistic.
That means you had to confront, let's be honest, failure. Like you had to confront failure in the face. I tried this, the shit didn't work. You know what I mean? Hey, I thought by removing story points and going to an average story count, it would keep teams from overestimating. Well, maybe. Are teams still going to overestimate? Maybe. Does that mean your idea was shit? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like we guess. We get, like, our work is guessing. And then when it works, we play it off as genius. And I feel like that hubris will probably if anything ends this little party that we're having in the big A Agile community, the Agile Industrial Complex, as Tim Otter says. If anything is going to be our downfall, it's going to be that is the inability to chuckle at ourselves. And let me say this: I'm also the dude that is not a giant fan of the comic Agile folks, because I've talked to them before, and I'm like, I feel like they're making fun of us. Well, maybe I struggle having a sense of humor about myself. You know what I mean? Like, as much as I'd love to post myself up in the corner of, oh, I'm awesome, like, thanks for appreciating my authenticity and my I'm here to just be love and truth and whatever. Like, bullshit. I'm going to get arrogant, I'm going to get defensive, and I'm going to be like, hey, I feel like you're making fun of me. Don't do that. Like, we're all guilty of that same shit, dude. You know?
I think, yeah, and that's where I kind of think that you are being a little unfair with yourself, because we all do the same shit. I mean, we're all in our human OS, we're all the same. We're all the same. A couple of us have defects in different parts of the code, which lend us to be different ways to approach things. But at the same time, we're all kind of the same, and we're more alike than different, I guess, is the point I'm trying to get to. So
if anybody saw the memes that you've texted me over the years,
I'd be in prison, but we're not going to talk about this.
I'm just saying, like, let's not all say like we're all
okay.
the same.
Fair enough.
Like,
fair enough. Some of us are just darker.
Human, and I love you.
Some of us have a darker, narrower, more inappropriate worldview. But so you had some in preparation for this episode. You sent over a bunch of things, and you sent over some of the things where you thought you were right, and then your recent experiences kind of changed that. And I want to pick apart one or two of them, not pick apart, but I want to ask them, because I think your verbal explanation would be better and maybe more insightful and actually more instructional to some of the people listening. One of the things you said that you learned that maybe isn't always the right thing to do all the time is, and I'm going to quote you here, quote, you should always, 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 you said it 3 times, speak up. That's how you change things, unquote. So as someone who has spoken up and gotten slugged in the mouth recently, I understand where you're coming from, but for the benefit of our listeners, can you give a little bit of insight into that and why your POV has shifted with that?
So, man, you have the listeners at home. You just have the ability to cherry pick just the absolute, like, batshit insane crazy things that I write. Like, I wrote 1,500 words in this.
Yeah, you really did. You really, yeah.
I wrote a lot of, and you picked the 20 that were like the most insane.
Well, because this is resonant for me. This is resonant for me.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that because you picked up on this, that means we need to talk about it. I'm just saying, for the listeners, I wrote many cogent, coherent things in the article.
And that's what I call it.
One of the few batshit crazy things that I wrote. So let me start by saying, Jay, if you were looking at 2 individuals to promote, take, rank, pay grade, whatever out of this, right? Gender, where they're from, who gives a shit, right? Like, we're all the same color, gender, speak the same language, history, whatever. So you have one person who always speaks up, always says positive things, always asks questions. Sometimes they're good questions, sometimes they're not good questions, but they're always being seen as being present and open and caring, right? Like, they put forth a good attitude. Like, you have that, and then you have the person that does the same amount of work, but is less present, less open, less vocal, and they tend to be called upon as opposed to calling upon others for change. where are you leaning in that scenario? And there's no wrong answer here, right?
So no. So I'll be honest. I'll admit it, it's due to my own personal bias, which I think is something that we're all aware of and we kind of try to push against. But I would pick person A because that is the person most like me, because I appreciate someone who would speak up and you had, well, not even necessarily assertive, just someone who would speak up, but you made a remark in one of your notes, right? One of your 5,000 plus words on that you sent me here. You talked about the agilist who speaks only in run-on sentences and gives away too much information. I feel personally attacked by that statement, first and foremost. But that's me.
Well, you should.
Yeah, I should. That's me. So to me, knowing that that's what I would hem towards tells me that I kind of got to look in the other direction. But you're right that, well, general corporate wise, it seems like from the outside looking in that the people who get promoted are the people who are vocal, but there's the third part of that, which you didn't talk about, the ones who don't make waves. The ones who don't make waves, and I've never seen someone who's a rabble rouser get promoted.
That's not true. I've been a rabble rouser many times and gotten promoted, but it's the environment that you rouse the rabble.
Fair.
That depends, right? So one of said organizations, I was an FTE in this org. My boss did a skip promotion for me, meaning I jumped 2 slots up the progression that he had set up. He did that for me and 2 other people, setting us apart from everybody else to say, like, these are the cream of the crop that I've got in my org, right? So in that same org, I also just flipped a bunch of tables over, told a bunch of people that they were doing things wrong based on nothing other than what I said was right or wrong. I went around and told leaders, you're doing it wrong. You're not leading in the appropriate manner. You're pushing for things that aren't appropriate. Like, I also got my first ever abstract for an Agile Alliance conference accepted at this company. I experienced a ton of highs, but at the same time, leadership, if they saw me walking towards them, pretended to be on the phone. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I did just pretended to be on the phone. Like, when I gave notice, one of the VPs of the org sat me down and we were having coffee one day and he goes, "Can I give you some advice on the way out?" And I'm like, and in my head, I'm like, I don't want your advice, but I don't want to be rude. Sure, have at it, bud. And the person said, you're a little wordy. And to succeed in the corporate world, you need to learn to shut up. So my suggestion for you is learn to be concise. And I thought, in my head, I'm like, I've been in meetings where you talked for 3 minutes straight. Like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because it's when my first lesson of what I say is the rule, except when I break the rule and then it's not the rule and then it's the opposite of the rule. Like, I learned that, I learned that at 33 years of age. You know what I mean? That was a force punch to the face of I don't think you realize you rent this job, you rent this career. Like, somebody not wanting you means you've reached your expiration. And so getting along in the world sometimes means you make compromises. But what does that say about you the more you compromise?
You lose yourself. You lose yourself.
This is okay, right?
Yeah, you lose yourself in the sense of compromise. And to that person who gave you that feedback, I would offer up one of the most interesting people whose work I follow is Jim O'Shaughnessy from Infinite Loops. And he said, the things that aggravate you in other people are the things you don't like about yourself. And he said that, and that guy, I'm assuming it was a guy, is the perfect example because, like you said, he has taken up 3 minutes of gobbledygook in a meeting, but then turns around and tells you need to be concise. And truth be told, one of the most famous correspondences from Mark Twain is he started a letter where he said, I wish I had more time to write a shorter letter. And the irony of that juxtaposition of that statement is it takes time to boil your thoughts down to get them into like 3 words. And I don't think a lot of people realize that some of us who are, and I am in the same boat with you, I am way too verbose and I use way too many words. It's really because I'm trying to think it out while it's coming.
So here's the thing, like if someone takes the time to get to know us, they'll understand that. The people that report to me at my current organization, I've spent 9 months with them. They know how I roll. They know where I come from. When I'm having a tough day, they know that I'll admit it and I won't blame them for it. They know that if they do something that could be considered a fuck up of some sorts, like I'm going to defend them. But they didn't know that in the very beginning. It's the same thing for anything that we do. I mean, there's so much hopping around of, within an org, from org to org, like there's so much, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out, like, did I even make the right decision taking my role? I mean, this work is hard. Like, did I even make the right move? I don't know. I honestly feel like, I'm just going to keep going back to this notion of knowing that you could have done better and refusing to say anything about it is kind of gross negligence. And I wish that we took time to be. Is it rude for me to say we should be more ashamed about some of the things we've done in the past, Jay, or is there a better way of wording it?
I don't think I would use the term rude. And I don't even know if there's a better way to word it, except, I mean, maybe I would change that to, we should take a moment to seriously reflect on some of the things we've done and said. And while not necessarily having to serve penance for them, use that as an opportunity to improve in the future. Like, I mean, we use the term retrospect all the time, right? And it's kind of blown out at this point, but we should take a moment to take a beat and like, yeah, I kind of gave some bad advice there, and that was probably my ego talking, so I shouldn't probably do that again. And yeah, let's not do that again.
So so Daniel Pink's newest book on the power of regret, right? Like that's the whole crux of the book, which is like, hey, when we ask people to think back on things they wish had happened differently, we're not saying you hate your life. We're just saying, could things like an individual situation could have been done differently? Most of the time that the regret is around inaction as opposed to action. Most people regret things that they didn't do as opposed to things that they did do. And to that, I will say, when you see something happening that is not kosher and you choose to not say anything, like if you see a team member just getting steamrolled by a dev lead, QA lead, scrum master, product manager, I don't care, right? Like a team, like who cares about rank or whatever? Like you just see someone getting steamrolled and you say nothing, like you should regret that. And I'm the king of that. Like the number of times that I have been in scenarios where I'm like, man, I should have done something. But also then you have to draw a line of like, I mean, Jay, have you ever sat down and said, these are the things that are my hills to die on, and these are the things that I'll just let slide and I don't care, right? Like, have you ever like actually like written those down?
No, it's more of an in the moment thing. And I know that's probably bad because that is,
I don't know.
Well, here's my thought. Let me unpack it. I think maybe I should, because it's probably bad that I haven't, because I may react over emotionally to things that in the grander scheme of things, I shouldn't react emotionally to. Maybe. But so thank you for the segue, because this ties to the other part of the notes that we had that I know is just going to make you as easily as just as uncomfortable.
Hold on. Before you get into that, let me just say this. If you write them down, there's no guarantee that when you actually experience that moment, that you're still going to feel the same pull. It's almost like you experience the hill and then you decide in that moment whether I would die on it or not. And it's almost like, I would argue, like, maybe you shouldn't make a list and maybe you should experience it first and go, actually, it was totally okay to not die on that hill. Turns out my idealism is not as clear as I thought. Maybe it's a little murkier. So anyway, sorry.
Maybe. No. You might be right. Well, let me try and not write anything down and see how that goes. So one of the things that you said, which is kind of like, again, we're picking at like raw exposed nerves here. You had a remark about the emotionless peers that you have in an organization get promoted faster than the emotional ones. And this is something you've been bouncing around in your front of mind. So let's talk a little bit about this, because I don't know if I agree or disagree, because I need to talk more about it to understand.
Well, so this was probably my most half-baked of regrets or ideas.
So I'm just miraculously picking the ones that are raw nerves. Okay, great.
No. You're picking the appropriate phrases, which is to say you might be the greatest foil of my life, and that's probably why we're best friends.
Good friends.
We are foils in the most amazing ways possible. When I joined my first 5 years in the IT industry, I saw people in charge or people promoted to be in charge that were sort of the most steady, cold. Cold is not an appropriate word, like that makes it seem like it's negative, that they're more even keeled. But the more even keeled, not as emotive in meetings, didn't have as many. Now, listen, you could get them at the bar for happy hour, and they'd give you all the smiles and giggles and laughs in the world. But in the meeting, in the moment, in the situation, like
stone-faced,
like we're solid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I saw those people getting promoted over me. And when I would talk with people that I reported to, those people also happened to be the more stone-faced folks than I, right?
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Murman. Is it, and I'm gonna be a little bit of a pain in the ass when it comes to the words being used, because I want to differentiate, because I want to understand.
Wait, just now, or you're
this is the story of my life, Jesus. We're going to do this now. We're unpacking your problems, not mine. Is it stone-faced or is it stoicism?
Well, I would argue, so I've actually been doing this year, I've been doing a lot of reading and studying about stoicism, and I would argue that there are actually very few Stoics in our
yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
So Stoicism is actually not a lack of emotion. It's diminishing the negative or inappropriate emotions. So, could you say that those folks were displaying a stoic attitude in the moment? Maybe. Let me just say maybe in the most positive sense. Like, they could be. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that I constantly saw. So on my blog, feel like I'm not here to plug anything specifically, but chrismurman.com, I wrote an article many years ago about my complex relationship with my emotions. I am not an emotionless person. I wear them on not only both sleeves, but I feel like I have face tattoos of my emotions. Like, I could try to be stone-faced and still show off.
You can't. I'm the same way. You can't hide it. You could be in the worst mood in the world. You can't hide it. No, I get it.
Yeah. Like I wear them everywhere, and it's not because I want to. Like I need the attention, I need the whatever. Like, is it partially the drama, like the theater, history of I've been in, I've been doing theater since I was a little kid, whatever small time theater you want to call it, but I've still been
I don't
doing
think
it.
so.
Like some of that maybe. I was raised in the church where you had to voice ideas and opinions and things vocally in front of lots of people. I've been through a very painful divorce and like child breakup situation, and I've written about it all. Like I'm a trained journalist, so I'm trained to write my feelings and write what I think, like everything like that. Those of you that think that journalism is just the facts and no emotion in it, that like doesn't understand writing. Like emotion comes out in everything we write. So you can't be pissed at someone for the Fox News or CNN or the New York Times or whatever, or Vogue, not having emotion. Like there's emotion in every single word we say and write, even if you're taking the emotion out of it. So
Have you ever tried to write in a voice that's not yours?
Many times.
It's near impossible, right? Like and I say that, and I know this is a wild tangent, but you're a trained journalist, so I'm going to pick a brain on this one. When I try, so like here's a perfect example, and this is going to resonate for a whole shit ton of people considering when this episode's coming out. The year-end employee engagement survey, which is it's anonymous. It's anonymous. I struggle because, I mean, I really don't care that if you're going to say, was this your comment where you said this guy is borderline brain dead? I mean, I wouldn't own it. But at the same time, I try to write in a voice that's not mine, and I really, really struggle because I can't not write in the voice that I hear in my head.
Well, so, let me say this as a former journalist, right? So there are often times that we say, this is a story and I have to write the story. And then you go, this is me. This is what I think about that story. And you go, this isn't a you story. This is a them story. And so a lot of times, professional writers have to put themselves. Now, listen, if you're Malcolm Gladwell, Michael Lewis, whatever, like I respect the hell out of these writers. They can tell any publishing house, I'm gonna take a dump on pages and sell them in my,
and people will buy it. Yep.
People will buy it, like it'll be a New York Times bestseller. Totally true. That said, if you sometimes go, hey, here's something that needs to be said. I need to say this, and this doesn't make me comfortable. Like that ultimately that's what writing is. It's if it was just the beauty of my blog, like the beauty of what I write now is that I'm not being paid for it. When I cook, I'm cooking dinner for my family. They're not paying me, they're not tipping me. And in fact, I take no pay cut because I'm not being paid to feed my family. So if they're like, you know what, I didn't like it, that wasn't my favorite, I can be like, cool, did this for free, word to your mother, like let's party the next day, whatever. So, well, it's different when this is our job, which is why I still sometimes struggle with sarcasm, even though as I'm talking with our veneer consulting brother that we will not name by name, like as I talk about satiricism or satire.
There you go.
That's not even a word.
It's satire. Probably a word somewhere in some country. Keep going.
Like satire, while it's important and tells a story, I struggle with because like I've most of the time, I mean, how many times, Jay, have you had to do something for teams you absolutely know is bullshit and will not work, and yet you're told to do it, and you've raised your objections, you've said it better do this way, and they go, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I've done it.
And like what, like
that? But that's a statement. that's a statement of our industry. That's a statement of customer expectations.
But we make fun of each other and tell each other we do shit wrong. Like, how dare you do this to teams? How dare you implement this framework? How dare you, you try this thing that should or shouldn't be done? Like, how dare you do this? Like, it's not that, bro, are you in my org? Like, were you in the meeting where I was like, hey, money's tight. Please do this. This is terrible. Like, why are we not? Like, that should count in our decisions, not like what I can post on LinkedIn.
And I think, well, what you just said is, what are we going to do? Money's tight. I'm kind of stuck. I mean, there is a undercurrent of this whole episode, and a lot of the topics that you sent over to talk about was the idea of just sometimes it is literally impossible to be completely honest. And just to say to somebody, look, I'm going to tell you to do this, and you're going to do it, and it's not going to work. And I know this, and you know this, but we have to do it to prove a point. And how often do we get that? It is a luxury to even say those words. It's the whole I'm going to get real deep here. The whole Gulag Archipelago, right? Solzhenitsyn. We know they're lying. They know we know they're lying. We know that they know that we know that they're lying. They know that we know that they know that we know that they're lying, and yet they still lie anyway. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like everybody kind of grins and nods, and you kind of hope that when it does fail, the blast radius isn't so bad that it just kills everyone.
Which is why the only original sin is when one of us jumps on social media and tells another one of us,
You're wrong.
And I can't stand that you would even think that that's agile. Like this notion of and you haven't called this out yet, but one of my biggest failures is thinking that there was and wasn't such a thing as doing something that's agile. As if that has power. We say that like it's a thing, and it's not a thing. We think that we can shame each other into doing what we want. Like, do you know there's 20 ways to do anything in your org?
Mm-hmm.
At a minimum, 20 different ways. Your way may work. Someone else's way also may work. Does that make you in charge that you said the thing and then people did it? Does that make you feel good? Because that's not leadership. It certainly isn't for me. I don't know if it's for you, Jay, but it hasn't made me feel any better for me to go, here's what we're doing, and then people do it. Like, I almost feel worse.
Yeah, I mean, I have quoted lately, and I don't even remember where I got this from, the remark of there's no right or wrong, there's successful or not. And if you're more concerned about being right than being successful, you're in the wrong role. And it's kind of hard to say that to some people, because there are some people whose entire career has been based upon them, maybe it's consulting, maybe it's something else, being right more than they're wrong. And that is a hard pill to swallow.
What's the phrase about marriage? Like, you can be happy or you can be right, but you can't be both, kind of a thing.
Yes.
Like, it's the same thing in the work that we do. Like, hey, did it make you feel good to be right? Did you just like, did it make you giggle, and then you shook around and you rolled around in your goodness juice and it made you feel good? Like, it shouldn't. I like the moment that I go, listen, this is what it is, and that's what I'm saying it. Therefore, I decree. Like, do you know how terrible I feel when I do? Like, I feel awful. Yeah. I feel awful. I feel less of a person for it, and I'm not happy about having to make a decision and go, therefore, thou shalt not use story points for capacity budgeting anymore. Oh, like, okay, like, sure, I made a call, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, like, no, I get it.
Jay, don't you end days and you just go, you know?
But I mean, so I'm going to take this conversation full circle and talk about there is a there is a big difference between being paid to provide your knowledge and your insight and your expertise versus being paid to do the thing. And the big difference between, I mean, at least I feel between consulting and an FTE role in what we do is consultant, you're paid for your expertise, your knowledge, right? And as someone who has admittedly only had full-time spots, there is something I lack in the sense of I haven't worked in 7 or 18 different companies. So I can say, look, I can tell you that based upon when I blend it all out, here's where it lands. And there's an expectation that you hire the consultant because they know everything. Whereas, as a full-timer, it's kind of like, I really don't give a shit. You got to do the thing. Just do the thing. And the people asking you to do the thing don't necessarily understand how difficult the thing is. And you're talking about almost the weight it draws on your soul about doing the thing when it might not be the right, I hate to use the word twice, thing to do, but you kind of got to do it.
Maybe. So I'm not disagreeing with you. This is one of those areas where I feel like as Agilists, we need to be a little more accepting of the gray, like the various shades of gray, and also like the part that's like kind of gray, but not like, it's definitely a little more white than black kind of a thing. Well, it may be more black than white for someone else, and that's okay. Like that's another reason why I feel like as a community we could get better. And any conference I speak at, any conference I attend, any online community, any meetup I join, like only thing I care about is, do we understand what someone else is going through, and is it okay if it's not the same as us? I think Jay, my biggest, I've said original sin probably 20 times in this podcast. And
you got a lot of original sins. It's okay.
Listen. Hey, we're all on a journey. Like bringing this around third base towards home, I feel like thinking that my way is the way, whatever your way is, you could say this is my way. It was most likely crafted as the way for you because of either your work experience or some content that you consumed, whether it be a conference, a class, a book, a webinar, a blog post, a Discord post from Jay Hershko, whatever, right? Like you've gotten this idea from somewhere, or you've already experienced it yourself. There's no reason why either of those things will work wherever you're at. There's no guarantee. Even if it has worked in 5 straight organizations as a consultant for you, the 6th may be the one that it doesn't. Does that make that organization weird or wrong? No. It just makes them that org. Like the fact that Jay has to get on cross-country flights to go see his teams and such, does that make his job terrible that he has to get on a plane and do that? No, it just means his sleep's kind of fucked up that week, and not to mess with him or text him random things because he'll just ignore you, whatever.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make his work wrong. So what I'm trying to say is that applies to everything. That applies to everything. And we should be learning things that we get along with each other about more than things that we don't get along with each other about, which is really the ultimate message of this podcast. Is I thought all of you were wrong if you didn't agree with me. I seriously have. I have argued with Jay about countless number of things.
Yeah.
Jay, ultimately, Jay, do we do the same things, and do we end up wanting the same things for our words? Absolutely. And we've yet yelled at each other so many times about how many stupid things. That's why we can't that's why we can't have nice things, people. This is stupid.
Yeah, we get in our own way. So I'm gonna end with a bit of the firecracker question, because neither one of us are fitting in this role right now, so it's easy to throw flaming arrows. You had a statement where you were retrospecting on your career, and you said, I used to think consulting is the best way to make money in our world. So let's go out with 10 minutes left. Let's go out and unpack that, because I actually kind of agree with that statement. If you're looking to make money, that's the way to go. The other side of that coin is, how much of your soul do you give up?
Well, this is the best way to make money. That's a better way to put it, is like, you can have money or you can not. Here's the, ultimately, we rent our jobs. Unless you go into business for yourself and you have your own LLC and you do corp to corp kind of work.
We're renting a chair. We're a caretaker. Yeah.
You rent your job. So what is your job doing to take care of you? For those of you that are earlier in your journey that are listening to this, let me say this. The first 5 to 10 years in IT, you can make significant jumps pretty quickly. It may take you to move around a lot. It may take, so if you don't care if you have a job every other year, a new job every year or every year, you can make some significant jumps. Significant. And I was really fortunate to get some giant jumps in my compensation as a result. The challenge is that you sometimes feel like, hey, I don't feel like looking for a new job this year, and it is what it is, or I'd like to, or you reach an age or you reach a level of, I've done this enough, so I'd like to find a spot to hang out long term. And so then you're like, well, then what do I like long term, right? So when I said I feel like consulting is the best way to make money, I was kind of talking about the money part of it, but also like, man, there's just something sweet about being able to go from company to company to company, and you get a different experience every time. Like you have constantly put, like, I will argue this, you've put yourself down an inordinate amount, but you have put yourself down from your experience, because some of us have been consultants while you've been at, you may recently made a jump, but you've been at the same company for a while. So maybe when I say, I don't know that I'm wrong in saying it's the best way to like advance in your journey. Like there is also like man, if I had hung out at this place longer or that place longer, like would have gotten better. I don't know. Maybe should I have? I don't know. Like we make the best decisions we can at the time we can. Like same thing for you. I know you have. Most of the time when you've kept your job, you're like, I would quit my job in a heartbeat. But like you've just said this job's really hard and I'm struggling with it right now. So we all process it differently, right?
Right. No, I think I think it's a fair statement. If you're looking to leap around and get a lot of momentum early, consulting is definitely the way. However, and this ties to some of the upcoming episodes we have. Where the fuck is this agile monster going 20 years in? Right? Are we the next Six Sigma coaches? We've had that conversation. We're starting to have that conversation. That conversation is starting to leak out of the news sphere, right? Our culture is starting to question those things like, well, what's next and where does that put us? Because we don't want to be the dinosaurs. And honestly, I have no idea. I'm trying to figure it out, but I think you're right.
We'll all figure it out. I mean, here's the beauty of the Discord. Like, come join the Discord. Come chat with us, because like there's a million reasons why Jay are right and I are right, and there's a million reasons why we're wrong. And I'm happy to own the parts that I don't have wrong. And in closing, like the things that I felt like were true don't feel as true now. And I wish that I had programmed into myself this notion of maybe this isn't always true. And I just wish I had done it sooner. And I'm asking you all, like, turn that dial up, please, because there's a lot of stuff that you think is true that ain't.
Yep.
Fair.
Yep. That's a great way to end it. It's the Dave Snowden weak signal detection. It's the idea of orthodoxy versus heterodoxy, right? So with that, I'm not giving the standard freaking ending because I don't feel like this episode needs it. Tune in next week where we're going to continue, I guess, this conversation. We're going to go into like frameworks or something else. So until next time, this is the Agile Uprising podcast signing out.
Woo!
Love fishing? Then you've got to listen to Fishing the DMV. Join me, your host, Thomas Ahrens, for an entertaining and informative podcast dealing with all things fishing in our area. Every week, we have on special guests ranging from the best fishing guides on our local waters to government officials from the Department of Wildlife Resource talking about hot-button issues like the invasive northern snakehead. We also highlight the best fishing opportunities in and around the greater D.C. area, Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Listen to Fishing the DMV on the iHeart app, subscribe to us on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, that's Fishing the DMV.